She said, "If you don't trust me hanging out with my ex every weekend, maybe we shouldn't be together." I replied, "You're absolutely right." Then I accepted the job transfer to London I'd been declining for her and sent a selfie from Heathrow Airport. I'm Ryan, 31, software engineer, and I need to get this off my chest because what happened 4 months ago still feels surreal. I was with Jade for 3 years, living together in a decent apartment in Seattle, splitting bills, doing the whole adult relationship thing. Everything was solid until February when her ex-boyfriend Dylan moved back to town after finishing his MBA in California. Jade mentioned it casually one morning over coffee, said they'd reconnected on Instagram and were going to grab lunch to catch up. I didn't think much of it because I'm not that guy who freaks out over exes. Plus, she said it was just friendly. 2 weeks later, she told me she joined a book club that met every Thursday evening at a coffee shop downtown, which seemed random because Jade never read much beyond Instagram captions. But I figured maybe she wanted a new hobby. The first few meetings were fine. She'd come home around 9 with a book in her hand talking about whatever they discussed. Then it became Thursday and Saturday afternoons. Then Friday nights got added to the schedule. I started noticing she'd shower and put on makeup before book club, which seemed excessive for discussing novels with middle-aged women, but when I mentioned it she laughed and said I was being paranoid. Around mid-March, my coworker Jake pulled me aside during lunch and said his girlfriend saw Jade at a sports bar with some guy, not at any coffee shop, and they looked pretty cozy. I brushed it off because Jake's girlfriend loves drama, but it planted a seed. That weekend, I casually asked Jade what book they were reading, and she froze for a second before saying something about The Great Gatsby, which we literally read together in college, so I knew she was bullshitting. I didn't confront her, though, because I wanted to see how far this would go. Here's the thing nobody tells you about relationships. There's a moment when you stop fighting for it and start documenting it instead. I hit that moment on a random Tuesday when Jade's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower. The preview showed Dylan. "Can't wait for Friday. Missed you so much." And I just stared at it feeling nothing, which was worse than feeling angry. I didn't snoop through her phone because honestly I didn't need to. The pattern was obvious. Book club was code for Dylan. Every single time. I sat on this information for 2 weeks while something else was happening in the background. My company had offered me a transfer to our London office back in January with a promotion and significantly higher salary. I turned it down twice because Jade had just gotten promoted to senior marketing manager at her agency, and she made it clear she couldn't leave Seattle, said her career was finally taking off and long distance would kill us. I loved her, so I stayed. Told my boss I'd reconsider in a year. But now, sitting in our apartment watching her get dressed up for book club for the third time that week, I started thinking about that offer differently. The breaking point came on a Saturday morning in early April. Jade announced she was spending the entire weekend at Dylan's lake house with the book club crew for a reading retreat. A whole weekend. She packed a bag with bikinis and sundresses, not exactly book club attire. I asked her straight up if Dylan was going to be there, and she got defensive immediately, said, "Why does it matter? Don't you trust me?" And I said I trusted her until she started lying about where she was going. She exploded, told me I was being controlling and insecure, that Dylan was just a friend, and if I had a problem with her having male friends, maybe I needed therapy. I stayed calm and asked her one simple question. If this is just innocent friendship, why did you lie about the book club? She went quiet for a moment, then doubled down, said she only called it book club because she knew I'd overreact if she said Dylan's name, which was actually proving my point, but she couldn't see it. Then she hit me with the line. If you don't trust me hanging out with my ex every weekend, maybe we shouldn't be together. I looked at her standing there with her overnight bag, all dressed up for another man's lake house, and something clicked. I said, "You're absolutely right," in the calmest voice I've ever used. She wasn't expecting that. Her face went from angry to confused to slightly panicked in about 3 seconds. She said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "I mean you're right. If I don't trust you, then we shouldn't be together, and I don't trust you, so we shouldn't be together." She tried to backtrack immediately, said she didn't mean it like that, but I was already done. She left for the lake house anyway, probably thinking I'd cool off by Sunday. The second she walked out the door, I opened my laptop and found the email from HR about the London position. The deadline to accept had been extended to April 15th, which was in exactly 72 hours. I hit reply and typed, "I accept the offer. When do I start?" and sent it before I could overthink it. My boss called me 20 minutes later sounding thrilled, said they could have me on a flight in 3 weeks if I could wrap things up quickly. I spent the rest of that weekend boxing up my stuff and calling the landlord about breaking the lease early. The apartment was under both our names, but I was the primary leaseholder. So I gave my 30-day notice and told the landlord Jade would need to figure out her own housing situation. He wasn't thrilled about the short notice, but understood given the job transfer. I started selling furniture on Facebook Marketplace, kept only what I could fit in 3 suitcases. Jade came home Sunday night glowing and relaxed, smelling like sunscreen and lake water, and acted like nothing happened. She tried to cuddle on the couch, and I moved away. She asked if I was still mad, and I said, "I'm not mad. I'm done." But she thought I meant done with the conversation, not done with us. For the next 2 weeks, she kept up the book club schedule while I systematically dismantled our life together. My coworkers knew I was leaving. We had goodbye drinks. I updated my LinkedIn, but I kept my social media silent. Jade posted Instagram stories from her book club meetings, which were obviously dates with Dylan at restaurants and hiking trails, and I saved every single one. She didn't notice I was packing because I did it gradually, and she didn't notice I was emotionally gone because she was too busy with Dylan. The Thursday before my flight, she came home and found me with 3 suitcases by the door. She panicked, asked where I was going, and I said, "London." She laughed like it was a joke until I showed her my work visa and flight confirmation. Then she lost it, started crying, asking how I could do this without telling her, and I reminded her that she's the one who said maybe we shouldn't be together. She tried every angle, said she didn't mean it, that she'd cut off Dylan completely, that she'd moved to London with me, that I was throwing away 3 years over nothing. I just kept packing. She called her mom, her sister, her best friend, trying to get someone to talk sense into me. But I'd already told my own family what was happening, and they supported my decision. I mentioned the lease situation, and she freaked out even more, realized she'd have to find a new place within weeks because she couldn't afford our apartment alone on her salary. She started blaming me for abandoning her, said I was being vindictive, but I reminded her she'd spent the last 2 months prioritizing Dylan over our relationship, and now she was dealing with the consequences. The morning of my flight, Jade was still asleep when I left for the airport. I didn't wake her up. I got to SeaTac, checked my bags, cleared security, and sat at the gate waiting to board. My phone buzzed with a text from Jade. "What are you doing this weekend?" Like she'd completely forgotten about the flight. I walked over to a window where you could see the planes, snapped a selfie with the Heathrow departure board visible behind me showing my flight number, and sent it to her with the caption, "You're absolutely right." Then I boarded the plane, put my phone on airplane mode, and didn't look back. The flight to London was 11 hours, and I slept through most of it, which was the first decent sleep I'd had in weeks. When I landed at Heathrow, I turned my phone back on and watched it explode with notifications. 47 missed calls from Jade, 89 text messages, and about a dozen voicemails that progressively went from angry to desperate to threatening. I didn't listen to any of them. My company had arranged temporary housing in Shoreditch, a fully furnished studio apartment that cost more per month than our entire Seattle place, but they were covering it for the first 60 days. I spent the weekend getting oriented, figuring out the tube system, buying groceries at Tesco, and generally pretending my phone wasn't vibrating every 20 minutes with Jade's calls. By Monday morning Seattle time, she'd switched tactics and started messaging my friends, my coworkers, even my mom, telling everyone I'd had some kind of mental breakdown and abandoned her without warning. My mom called me concerned, and I calmly explained the whole book club situation, the lying, the lake house weekend, everything. She went quiet for a minute, then said, "Good for you, honey. You deserve better." And that was that. The Instagram stories started on Tuesday. Jade posted a crying selfie with the caption, "When someone you love chooses their career over you," with sad music and everything. Her friends flooded the comments with support, calling me selfish and heartless, saying real men don't run away from problems. I didn't respond or react, just kept living my life. My first week at the London office was intense, meeting the new team, getting up to speed on projects, trying to adjust to British work culture, which is similar to American, but with more tea breaks and slightly more passive-aggressive email etiquette. My new boss mentioned they'd been trying to fill my position for months and were thrilled to finally have someone with my experience. The salary difference was noticeable immediately. I was making significantly more than in Seattle, and the cost of living somehow felt more manageable despite London's reputation. On Thursday evening, exactly 1 week after I left, I got a message from an unknown number with a Seattle area code. It was a screenshot of a conversation between Jade and Dylan from 2 months earlier, where she explicitly told him she'd made up the book club excuse because I was too clingy, and she needed space to figure out if she wanted to be with him instead. There were multiple screenshots, spanning weeks, showing her complaining about me to Dylan, planning their meetups, even discussing how to handle it if I found out. The messages were damning. She'd told Dylan she was planning to break up with me after his current studio lease ended in June, when he'd be moving into a bigger two-bedroom place where they could live together, meaning she was just waiting for the right timing while stringing me along. The unknown number sent one more message. Thought you should know the truth. Good luck in London. And then blocked me before I could ask who they were. I sat there staring at my phone for a solid 20 minutes processing everything. Part of me wanted to blast those screenshots everywhere, send them to everyone who'd called me heartless on her Instagram post, prove that I wasn't the villain in this story. But honestly, I was just tired. I saved the screenshots to a folder and went to bed. Jade somehow got my London number, probably from my mom or a mutual friend, and called me Friday morning while I was getting coffee before work. I answered because I knew she wouldn't stop until I did. She immediately started crying, said she missed me, that she'd stopped being friends with Dylan completely, that the book club thing was stupid, and she was sorry. I let her talk for about 3 minutes, then said, I got some interesting screenshots this week, and she went completely silent. I could hear her breathing on the other end, probably trying to figure out what I knew and what I didn't. She asked who sent them, and I said it didn't matter. What mattered was that I now had proof she'd been planning to leave me for Dylan and was just waiting until his lease ended in June so they could move in together. She tried to deny it, said those messages were taken out of context, that she was just venting to a friend, but I cut her off and said, you literally discussed which apartment you'd move into and talked about furniture shopping. She started crying harder, begging for another chance, saying she'd made a mistake and realized she loved me. I told her the truth. I didn't love her anymore, hadn't loved her since I found out about the lying, and I'd only stayed in Seattle as long as I did because I was too comfortable to make a change. She got angry then, said I'd used her as an excuse to avoid taking risks, that I was probably relieved to have a reason to run away. Maybe she was partially right, but it didn't change anything. I told her to lose my number and hung up. The weekend brought a new development. Jade's Instagram story showed her at Dylan's apartment. They were officially hanging out again, apparently despite her claims of cutting him off, posting photos like they hadn't been sneaking around behind someone's back for months. Her caption was something about, real friends stick around through the hard times, which made me laugh out loud in my tiny London studio. The comments were split between supportive friends and people pointing out the suspicious timing. Someone even commented, didn't you have a boyfriend last week? And Jade deleted it within minutes. My friends back in Seattle started sending me screenshots of the drama unfolding in various group chats. Apparently Jade's story wasn't adding up, and people were starting to ask questions. Then on Sunday, I got the best message possible. My old coworker Jake, the one whose girlfriend had first spotted Jade with Dylan at the sports bar, sent me a screenshot from his girlfriend. Turns out Dylan had a serious girlfriend the entire time, a woman named Olivia who worked in tax compliance for the IRS and had no idea Dylan was seeing Jade. Someone had anonymously sent Olivia screenshots of Dylan and Jade's Instagram stories, and she'd gone nuclear, posted a long Instagram story exposing both of them, complete with receipts showing Dylan had been lying to both women. The post went viral in our Seattle social circle within hours. Olivia's post was methodical and devastating. She'd documented every lie, every fake excuse Dylan had given her about working late or visiting his sick mom. Every weekend he'd supposedly been on business trips that lined up perfectly with Jade's book club schedule. She tagged both of them, called Jade a homewrecker, and ended it with, to the ex-boyfriend who moved to London, you dodged a bullet, cheers mate. I screenshot that line and sent it to my mom with a laughing emoji. By Monday morning Seattle time, both Jade and Dylan had made their Instagram accounts private and the fallout was spreading. Mutual friends were messaging me asking if I'd known about Dylan's girlfriend, and I honestly hadn't, which somehow made the whole situation more satisfying. I hadn't even needed to expose them. They'd exposed themselves. My new routine in London was starting to feel normal. Morning coffee at the Pret downstairs, tube to work, evening walks along the Thames, weekend exploration of different neighborhoods. I joined a gym near my apartment and started going to a pub quiz night on Wednesdays at a place called The Crown, just trying to build a normal life. Jade kept trying different numbers to reach me, but I'd blocked them all. 2 weeks after the Olivia explosion, Jade showed up at my old Seattle apartment building with her mom and sister, apparently not accepting that I'd actually moved to a different continent. My former neighbor texted me that they'd seen her in the lobby demanding to know which unit I was in, and building security had to escort them out when she wouldn't leave. Her mom tried calling my mom afterward to arrange some kind of intervention, saying I was clearly going through something and needed help, but my mom shut that down immediately and told her the whole truth about the book club lies. After that, the calls from Jade's family stopped. The person I was 4 months ago would have felt guilty, would have called her to make sure she was okay, would have somehow made her pain my responsibility. But that version of me died somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean, and the new version was doing just fine. 6 weeks into my London life, and I was genuinely thriving in ways I hadn't expected. The promotion came with responsibilities that pushed me professionally. My team actually appreciated my input instead of talking over me in meetings, and the company had extended my temporary housing while I searched for something permanent. I'd just signed a lease on a proper one-bedroom apartment in Canary Wharf with a view of the Thames that made the rent almost worth it, and I was scheduled to move in the following month. I started exploring the city properly on weekends, hit up Borough Market for food, took the train to Brighton one Saturday, just because I could, and generally lived like someone who wasn't carrying the weight of a dying relationship anymore. The irony wasn't lost on me that it took moving 5,000 miles away to remember what happiness felt like. Back in Seattle, the fallout was still unfolding in spectacular fashion. Jake's girlfriend kept me updated through occasional messages. Apparently, Dylan's reputation was completely destroyed, and people at his company started calling him Book Club as a nickname, which spread so fast that even his boss used it in a meeting. Dylan tried to do damage control by claiming Jade had pursued him and he'd just been a good friend, which made Olivia post even more screenshots showing he'd initiated most of their meetups. Jade went silent on social media for about 3 weeks after that, then came back with a post about toxic people and learning to love yourself that everyone saw through immediately. Her friend group had apparently split, half thinking she was the victim and half realizing she'd played everyone. The job she was so afraid to leave for me ended up letting her go during budget cuts, which I only found out about because my mom mentioned it casually during our weekly call. Then something completely unexpected happened. I got a message request on Instagram from someone named Olivia Martinez, and the profile picture looked familiar. It was Dylan's ex-girlfriend, the IRS agent who'd exposed the whole affair. My first instinct was to ignore it, figured she wanted to drag me into more drama, but curiosity won and I opened it. Her message was straightforward. Hey, I know this is random, but I wanted to reach out. Saw your post from London, and honestly good for you for getting out. I'm still dealing with the aftermath here, and sometimes I just need to talk to someone who actually gets it. No pressure, just thought I'd try. I sat there for a few minutes deciding whether to respond, then figured what the hell, we were both collateral damage in the same mess. I wrote back and we started talking, first just about the situation with Jade and Dylan, but then about other things, our jobs, how we both ignored red flags, how weird it felt to have our private lives become public gossip. She was funny and self-aware, made jokes about how she'd turned into the crazy ex-girlfriend who exposed people on Instagram even though she'd just been defending herself. A few weeks into our conversations, she admitted something that completely floored me. She'd been the one who sent me those screenshots of Jade and Dylan's messages back when I first arrived in London. She said she'd found my Instagram after her own investigation into Dylan's lies, saw that I'd moved to London, and felt like I deserved to know the full truth even if we never spoke. She'd used a burner number because she didn't want to freak me out with a random message from Dylan's ex-girlfriend, but she wanted me to have the evidence. I thanked her for that, told her those screenshots had given me closure I didn't know I needed, confirmed that leaving was absolutely the right choice. We started messaging regularly after that revelation, nothing romantic at first, just two people who understood what it felt like to be betrayed by someone you trusted. She told me about her work at the IRS, how she'd actually gotten promoted recently and was handling more complex cases, how her CPA certification had opened up opportunities she was exploring. I told her about adjusting to London, the differences in work culture, how strange it was to start over at 31, but also how liberating it felt. About 8 weeks into our messaging, she mentioned she'd always wanted to visit London, had never been to Europe at all actually, and I made a spontaneous decision and said, "You should come visit, I'll show you around." She hesitated at first, said she didn't want it to be weird, and I told her it would only be weird if we made it weird, that my studio had a pull-out couch, and I knew all the good tourist spots now. 3 weeks later, I was picking her up from Heathrow, holding a sign that said, "Book Club Survivors," which made her laugh so hard other travelers stared at us. That first day was slightly awkward. We were both hyper-aware that we'd only known each other through texts and shared trauma, but by the time we hit Borough Market for lunch, the conversation flowed naturally. She loved London immediately, the history, the architecture, the fact that you could get Indian food at 2 a.m. I took her to all the places I discovered. We did the typical tourist things like the Tower of London and the British Museum, but also just walked around neighborhoods talking about everything and nothing. On her fourth night, there we were having dinner at this Italian place in Soho, and she said something that shifted everything. She looked at me and said, "You know what's weird? I feel more comfortable with you after 2 months of texting than I felt with Dylan after 2 years." I knew exactly what she meant because I felt the same way. We started actually dating after that. It happened naturally without any big declaration or awkward conversation. Her 2-week vacation turned into discussions about remote work policies and visa options. She had vacation days saved up and her job had flexibility for remote work, so she extended her stay to a month while we figured out if this was real or just trauma bonding. Somewhere around week 3, I realized I didn't want her to leave, and apparently she felt the same because she started researching IRS international positions and UK work visas. Back in Seattle, Jade had apparently started seeing someone new, a CrossFit coach at her gym, and was posting vague stories about new beginnings and finding real love, which lasted approximately 2 weeks before his actual girlfriend showed up at the gym and caused a scene. The pattern was becoming clear to everyone except Jade herself. But the real karma came when Olivia's colleagues at the IRS, after hearing her whole story, decided to look into some of Jade's financial records. Turns out Jade had been doing side marketing consulting for the past year and hadn't reported any of it on her taxes, and there was documentation of payments through Venmo and PayPal that she'd foolishly kept public. Olivia wasn't directly involved in the audit to avoid conflict of interest, but she definitely didn't discourage her co-workers from being thorough. Jake said the IRS investigation was moving forward and Jade was facing potential fines that would basically wipe out her savings. Dylan had apparently left Seattle entirely, moved back to California with his tail between his legs after his company's HR got involved in the relationship drama. The book club nickname had followed him, though. Jake said people from the Seattle office had told people at his new location, and it spread there too. For months after Olivia's first visit, she made the decision to stay permanently. She'd found a position with an international tax firm in London that actually paid better than her IRS job, and her CPA certification transferred smoothly to UK standards. We'd moved into my new Canary Wharf apartment together, the one-bedroom suddenly feeling perfect for 2 people starting fresh. My mom was thrilled when I told her, said she'd always thought Jade was too self-absorbed and Olivia sounded much better for me. The weird part was how natural it all felt, like we'd skipped over all the typical relationship anxiety because we'd already seen each other at our worst, already knew each other's damage, and chose to be together anyway. My phone buzzed one evening with a message from a Seattle number I didn't recognize. It was Jade, clearly using someone else's phone, with a long paragraph about how she'd made mistakes, how she'd been in therapy and realized she had commitment issues, how she wanted to start over if I'd just give her one more chance. I showed it to Olivia and she rolled her eyes and said, "Let me guess, the CrossFit guy didn't work out." I deleted the message without responding. Some people don't deserve closure, and some chapters need to stay closed. That weekend, Olivia and I posted a photo together for the first time, us at the Thames with Tower Bridge in the background, both genuinely smiling. I captioned it, "Found my favorite book club," which was corny, but felt right. Within an hour, we both got blocked by Jade on every platform, which told us she'd seen it. Dylan apparently sent Olivia a message saying, "Really? Him?" And she replied, "Yeah, really him. Someone who actually respects me," and blocked him too. 3 years with Jade, and she'd never once made herself at home in my space the way Olivia did after 3 weeks. 6 months with Dylan, and he'd never made Olivia feel valued the way I did just by listening. That told us everything we needed to know about the difference between settling and actually being happy. A year later, I heard through mutual friends that Jade had moved to Portland and deleted all her social media after the IRS situation got resolved with significant fines. Dylan was apparently engaged to someone new in California, and honestly, I hoped he'd learned something but doubted it. As for me and Olivia, we were exactly where we needed to be, doing work we loved, building something real that wasn't based on lies or hidden agendas. Sometimes the best revenge really is just living well, and sometimes the worst thing that happens to you leads you to the best thing that could happen. London taught me that. Olivia reinforced it, and neither of us are ever looking back. What do you think about this story? Let me know in the comments, drop a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories.